Hello, good morning. The purpose of this video is to present the evaluation of a language learning app. Hope you enjoy the content. To begin with, I will present the outline of this video. First, I will discuss the pedagogical rationale through which I selected the app under evaluation. Then, I will describe the features and the functionalities that the app possesses. This will be followed by the evaluation criteria and their results. And we will conclude with a brief discussion of how this app can be incorporated into L2 education. The name of the application we will be evaluating today is Cake. Yes, it is a very interesting and unique name. And these are the three elements that were considered as a pedagogical rationale for selecting the app. First, the application had to provide learners with varied and rich opportunities for language exposure. Two, it had to be embedded in meaning-based comprehension and production. And three, it had to have a communicative orientation. After looking for many options that were available on the internet, I came across through this application and I selected it for this evaluation since it fulfilled the requirements presented here in the pedagogical rationale. So, which are the features and the technological functionalities of this app? To approach this, I included a short video of what the user has access to once they download the app. So let's see how it works. So first of all, the main tabs the app includes are Today and Subscriptions. And for example, in the tab Today, we have different practice conversations in which English is used in real life. Then we have recommended courses. They vary along in the topics. Then we have, for example, series, friends, and then they take excerpts and employ them for learning process. Then we have real life situations such as making an appointment, and they give you phrases depending on different situations taken from series or from other multimedia. Then we have the conversation of today. This is a really unique and outstanding feature of the app because they start the conversation as if they were real life communication. For example, in this case, Jim and Nick, we're seeing how they are chatting. Then we can have access to repeating or even play as if we were one of the speakers. Then the app offers us vocabulary and then it shows us different ways of saying it and grammatical rules in some sense. Then we can also have the option of repeating and having access to the conversation of the day. And then it congratulates us for finishing the conversation of today. Then it suggests us vlogs. And as you can see, the topics and the input is very rich. You can literally have access to YouTube, to all the YouTube videos that are included in the app. And all of them highlight or include learning excerpts that can help you see how language is used in real life situations. And it really depends on what we are looking for. And it's very personalized and you can have access to all of them right here. For example, as I mentioned, it can be very personalized. Why? Because it functions as if it was a YouTube channel. For example, here you can see that we can subscribe to different categories and to different channels. For example, we can have English for Kids, Easy English, and business. For example, if we want to incorporate it through a business class, it may work. Or if you're interested in this field, you can subscribe to this channel and the input you receive will be in this regard. And for example, we have movies, we have listening for beginner students, what about traveling, a comedy, American TV series, and it can largely vary. And you can definitely draw upon a large variety of input. And most of all, it highlights or draws upon your interest to present you new linguistic items. After going through the content and the different type of input that the app offers to the user, it was necessary to create an evaluation criteria. Why? Why is it important to evaluate this app and not just have this superficial understanding of how it works? Why? Because we need to go further. It's not just the app, but how the app can be incorporated into language learning and how useful and beneficial it can be for the user. And there were four main categories that were considered to develop this evaluation criteria. First of all, the implementation and user information. The aspects that are included in this category are, for example, practicality, the adequacy, and the appropriateness of the content, the L2 education elements that it incorporates, how user friendly it is, and the diversity of the resources it offers. Then, when it came to the interface design, this takes in consideration, for example, technical support of the app, the effectiveness it has in usability and functionality, of course, the language used, and the overall experience of the user. And for the L2 learning task, it incorporates aspects such as collaborative learning, authentic material, the engagement patterns, the vocabulary and how it is approached through the app, the language learning potential it has for developing a learner's proficiency in the language, and how it is focused on meaning. And finally, but most importantly, the L2 foundations it has. Why? Because we need to understand if it's just created based on something that is not related to the L2 acquisition theory, or if it is. So, for example, when it came to L2 acquisition foundations, I included aspects such as the theoretical and empirical support, aspects such as situated cognition and strategies, and how input is transformed into intake through this application. So after conducting the analysis, developing this criteria, the results could be divided into main categories. First, the strengths, and then the shortcomings. However, it is very, very important to understand that some strengths may represent a shortcoming depending on the view we have of language learning, the context we are going to implement the app, the users. So the information that is going to be presented in the results, please take into consideration that for some purposes, some of the strengths I present may be a shortcoming or vice versa. So the strengths, as you can see, and I am very happy for this, the strengths are numerous. And the three most outstanding are authentic language use, richness in input diversity, and learner fit quality. And what does these three main strengths have to do with? The app, authentic language use. As you can see in the previous slides, the application offers really authentic language use since it offers, for example, movies, series, real life communication. So it presents to the learner excerpts or samples of language that occur in real life, and then it is not classroom constrained like the typical English textbook and English audios. No, they really represent how language is explored and how it is used in real life. And learner fit quality, as you can remember, you can subscribe to different channels or to different um, topics depending on your interest. So it is not just something that is imposed to you, but you select it based on your likes, based on your preferences and your interests. Then, as part of the pedagogical rationale, as you remember, it has a communicative orientation. Why? Because everything is based on how communication works in real life. And it is approached through simulations of real life communication, either through excerpts or bits and pieces of language, and also through this simulation of chatting. Like you can see yourself chatting with another person, and you can speak as if you were them, and this presents more or less how we communicate in daily life. Like it reminded me of how we speak in WhatsApp or Messenger. So it's a um, real that communication situated. And due to this communicative orientation, it offers focus on meaning, not on form. And now, it could be also seen as a resource that is independent and it's free access. You don't have to pay anything. Also, you do need to have internet access. And why do I label it as an independent resource? Why? Because it is not necessary to be, well, it does not necessarily have to be included in a classroom context. What do I mean with this? Even if you're not enrolled in an English class, in an English course, you can implement this app and it will promote your language learning. And as I mentioned, uh, since it can be used as independent from the classroom setting, it really fosters really learner autonomy. Why? Because it creates this environment in which you, as a learner, you, as a user, need to have or develop this motivation to access it. And even more when it is not part of a curriculum. And it really offers expanded linguistic rehearsal opportunities. It is not just this definition, concept, relationship, like this word means this. No, it goes further. It helps you to expand and even, go beyond this mere definition, concept, relationship, because you can see the word in real use. And lastly, it promotes reading, listening, and speaking. These are the three skills that are promoted the most. Reading, as you can see through the text, chatting, listening through all the excerpts taken from different YouTube videos, movies, and others. And speaking, why? Because you can be part of this conversation. You can record yourself to imitate this pronunciation and you can really develop these three skills through it. And as I mentioned before, something really important when it comes to app evaluation is to determine the foundation it has in an L2 theory. For example, the most outstanding or the most representative theory implemented in this app is the multimedia learning theory, which, according to Plass and Jones 2005, in language education, different media can be combined in production and comprehension tasks to help learners develop the target linguistic system as a means or through the process of meaning. So it is not just the language in isolation, but it is incorporated through different media, in this case, videos, chatting, and different multimedia devices. And it fosters comprehensible input and output. This comprehensible input is language not in isolation but in use. And output, since it helps the user to transform this input into something they can take into real life. And also, something that really caught my attention is how the salient language features are incorporated in this application. For example, if you want to learn a phrase, there is a task in which the app highlights, literally highlights, and mentions 3 times the phrase. For example, I want a piece of cake, a piece of cake, a piece of cake. This is a salient feature that aims to catch the attention of the learner and to help them determine the specific use of that excerpt in the conversation or in the situated conversation or communication. And then also something that was included are subtitles. And according to literature, when we have when the user has this opportunity to have subtitles, it results in a better comprehension and therefore in a better use of the foreign language, according to Izquierdo 2014. What does this mean? You can, and also it is important to mention that you can deactivate this feature, but it could be somehow employed in the initial phases. Then you can try it out and say, okay, I'm gonna try it without the subtitles and see how much I did learn. And lexical gains through high frequency. In this one, the lexical gains are approached through the tasks that are called repaso. Through this repaso task, we can have high frequency because it's not just like I saw the word and that's it. No, it constantly brings you back the phrase that you learned. You have to do this quizzes also. So it is not just one time vocabulary exposure, but a continuous one. And as it is communicative orientation, it incorporates research from corpus linguistics and concordance use, which determines that a language item is better learned in concordance use, that is, um, in combination with others or in certain phrases rather than in isolation. And there's also a feature that is called student discovery strategies, in which the app requests the user to repeat the phrases, and if it is not well pronounced, they ask you to repeat it again and again and again. But they do not tell you what mistake you are doing. They leave it up to you to discover what is the mistake and how to solve it. So we also have this other side of the story, the shortcomings. What shortcomings does this app present? Well, to begin with, collaborative learning is not promoted in this app. There is no interconnection between the users. For example, you cannot have access or you cannot connect to another user. Everything is like very an individual process, an autonomous and independent resource, as I mentioned before. So collaborative learning is not fostered. And according to literature, collaborative learning has the potential of increasing the user's motivation. Why? Because they approach the learning process not in isolation, but in combination with other features such as feedback from other classmates, from the teacher. But in this case, it is a very isolated process, which leads to a low engagement patterns. What about this? What are engagement patterns in this case? Are the tips are the resources that the app has to create this connection between the user and the app and to promote motivation to its use. And the only engagement patterns identified in the app is the time used. It tells you how much time you have spent in the app, and you can set daily goals, for example, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, up to 60 minutes. And they really leave it up to the personal user's interest and motivation. It has to be from them. They have to develop this intrinsic motivation, since no extrinsic motivation will be fostered or offered by the app. Also, as I mentioned before, the skills that were implemented the most were listening, reading, and speaking. But what about writing? This skill is the least fostered and it is very limited. They only incorporate it in blank exercises from listening tasks. So this skill is the one that is the least promoted and perhaps would represent a deficiency in the app. And what about implementing it in L2 education? It definitely represents some challenges. Why? Because if you, as an English teacher or as a language teacher, aim to implement this app, you would really need to create or adapt its use. For example, you will need to develop follow-up activities, leading activities. It is not just like, oh, there's the app and use it, and then it will be automatically, let's say, incorporated. No, you will, as a teacher, have to create this link between the curriculum and the content that the app offers. For example, I was thinking of this suggestion for the app. Have a week in which one student decides the topic. For example, if I'm interested in, I don't know, for example, Law and Order, the series, and I'm really interested on this, maybe I as a student can select it for the week and all the other students can use it too. So that would be a way of incorporating and also to foster collaborative learning, since they will not do it alone, but in company of other classmates and with the supervision of the teacher. And also, there is an interface. When it comes to the interface design and architecture, there is a problem here. Why? Because it is not intuitive. The first time I opened this app, it was like, oh, it is so much input, like so many, that it at some point it becomes overwhelming. And it just gives you like throws up this input to you, but there is no organization. There is no way in which you can accurately go through it and go around it. It is just this is the information. Um, Choose what you want to do, but it is not very intuitive in this relation. And finally, there's a program disclosure. As I mentioned, the app does not offer feedback, and it is only restricted to wrong, try again, or do it in a stronger way. It was not possible to hear you, but it does not really help you to identify the feedback that you require to improve. I thought it could also be a strength because it develops discovery strategies as mentioned in the strengths. So it really depends on our view. And finally, the discussion. If I was asked, would you recommend the implementation of this app in L2 education? My answer will be yes, I will implement it in L2 education, particularly in EFL settings. Why? Because as an EFL teacher, I know that the exposure or the input that my students can receive outside the classroom is highly limited. It is very restricted. I have this experience, for example, here in Chihuahua in the north, even when some people think that, oh, yes, you're in the north and you have more access because you're closer to the US. But no, the answer is no. Most of the input the students receive is restricted to the classroom context. So, how can this app address this lack of exposure to the language? It could do it through this communicative orientation it has, because it will present real life examples of how language is actually used. I have received comments from my students that mention like, oh, it's because in the audios from the books everything is so understandable, everything is so clear and paused and calm, but then when they go and face reality and real life communication, they just freak out. Why? Because it's not as the English audio. It definitely has a higher speed, higher complexity. It requires different strategies than just answering true or false. So, through this app, I could offer my students a possibility, an opportunity to which they can experience real life situated learning. And also, it is a way of creating this click for them, because it will promote or it will offer to them language according to their preferences, what they like, the topics they're interested in. So it will be more than teacher oriented. This app is definitely learner oriented. And if we aim to implement it or incorporate it into an EFL setting or a classroom, certain adequacies will have to be established, because there has to be a link between what the curriculum states, what the app offers. So this connector or this link between these two aspects will definitely be the teacher. Why? Because she will be acquainted with what the syllabus is expecting the learners to acquire, and what the learners are um, or the preferences the learners have in terms of how they want that input to be received according to their preferences and likes. So yes, I will implement it, but I will be really careful. Why? Because it is not teacher fitted. Yes, if my view of language is through communicative approaches, it definitely suits. But we need to be very careful, because we need to establish this link. It is not just like, oh, this is an extra resource, you can use it outside the class. No, because although it has the potential to lead to learner autonomy, The engagement patterns that the app offers are not sufficient for it to stand by itself. So as a teacher, we will need to establish this connection between the class and the content that the app offers. So this is the end of the video. Thank you very much. I really would like for you to try it on your own. You can download it for iOS or Android. It's a free access resource and take a look. Maybe you are a teacher and you will find ideas to implement for your classroom, or if you're a student, you can see how language is not constrained to grammar, it's not constrained to what the teacher says. There's a world of opportunities in which language can be seen through different real life scenarios, and mainly that they can adapt and they can be part of your preferences. English does not have to be boring. English is fun. English is amazing. You just have to find the right route to it. So, thank you very much. I hope you liked this presentation, and well, see you next.